Hello, good morning. Welcome to the fifth episode of the show Exploring Automation, where we ask each other questions and learn from each other's experiences. I'm Lavanya Mohan, and with me is Ajay Balamarudas.
Hello,
Hi, Ajay.
good morning.
Morning. Okay, so today we thought that we will look at an app and we will see if we can read code. We've been talking about reading app code in the past few sessions, so we thought, well, let's try doing that today. Um, so we will use a simple book application, and Ajay has not seen the code at all. So we will work together and see how we can read it. All right.
Right.
So this is our application. It's all currently everything is just local. So that's why you can see local host here. There is a search box where you can search for a book, and basically when you do search it, you will get some list of results. Now there is one logic here that we show only five results. There's no pagination, there's nothing else. But yeah, we just basically show five results only. For Harry Potter, for example, there are more than five books, but we are showing just the latest five. Latest meaning the ones that were most recently published,
Mhm.
and in that order. So this was most recently published, this was published slightly before that, and so on. All right. Similarly, if we search for, let's say, rings, then we see Lord of the Rings three books. And let's say I search for something like an off, then it shows Harry Potter and it shows one of the Lord of the Rings books because there is this off here. And again, it shows in the order in which it was published. So since Lord of the Rings was published way long back, it comes at the end. All right. So this is our simple application.
Um,
Now, yeah.
what happens if we search for something that's not there?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay,
All right.
right.
Okay. So now, before we actually start looking at code or reading code, it might be nice to understand what are the different components that are involved at a higher level. Right? So we could think about it in terms of modeling how this application works overall. So let's say that we either talk to somebody who's already worked on this and knows about the architecture, or maybe we could read some wikis where we there are like pages about how this is actually implemented. So let's just look at it in terms of a very simple diagram. Uh, it's this is a very simple application which just looks like this. So there is a client side code. Then that client side code makes a call to some server. The server talks to database, gets the book, does some computation like show only five results, and then sends that back to the client, and then the client displays it.
Hmm.
So very simple model. Um, Since this is a very simple application, there are just three boxes here, right? But if there were, let's say, more services, let's say that we were this server would internally talk to another service to get the ratings of the book, for example. So then there would be another, like maybe call here, which would from which it would take the data, then maybe do some additional processing, and then return to the client.
Mhm.
So it could be all of that. But here, what we just did is model an application like a very high level overview of what are the different major components involved in the application itself.
Right.
And this, in some sense, would help us understand what happens internally. So, for example, now since we are saying that there is a call that happens from this client to the server to get something, maybe let's start with looking at what is the call. So we could go back to the app and open the network console. I will just talk it down here. Um,
So we could close the console. Yeah.
yeah. So, like most of the browsers allow us these developer tools, and we can maybe look at what are the calls that go on in the network tab. Maybe we could speak more in detail about this in the following sessions, but for now, we could just see what call is actually happening for this particular case. So, let's say that we search for water. Then if you see that there are a couple of network calls that are happening. And this one, search, is the actual API that is getting called. So basically, localhost 9000, this is where currently this server is hosted. Uh, since everything is local, it is localhost. And then search is the endpoint API that we actually get calling. And we are also passing some title as a query parameter. And since we search for Potter, it says Potter. And this would give us some response back, which is a JSON format, which actually gets displayed. Okay. If you see, there are a couple of other things. These are just those images which the assets and images that are actually loaded here on the page. All right. So yes, this is the call that happens, the search endpoint, which is getting called. So this is, let's say we now focus on this one. Again, now this is a very simple application. That's why you are seeing this one network call. For most of the applications that we usually work on, there will be many more, and we need to probably take one at a time and see what those things do. So now, in order to read code, like now, since we know that there is client component, there's server component, of course, the database. Let's maybe start today with just the server part, and let's see what all actually happens with it. Okay. Now, where does the server part actually start? It starts after the /search endpoint that call is made, right? So maybe we could start with that. Now, I have a code here, but before we look at this code itself, let's first try to understand the directory structure. Now, every project will have a different directory structure, could have, and it's important for us to understand that before we look at the code itself. So let's first focus on that. Now, this one, let's say that our developers tell us that they have written this in Java Spring Boot application. And we can ask them, how is our code structured? Like, okay, there is a server-side component, but what are the different things present? So let's say that they say we have mainly these four things: controllers, models, repositories, and services. What do these things mean? Okay, so I'll just type it here. Let's say they say controllers are just the place classes which represent our endpoints. So /search, for example, will be mapped here. So what are the endpoints that are present are here, and then it does delegation. What do we mean by delegation? Well, basically, it just calls a method from some other class and then finally returns the result. So this is the responsibility of the controllers in our context. Yeah? Then we say there is services. Okay, do remember, this is just the things of the server component. We're not talking about the client component. What are services? They say, oh, controllers actually, when they call a method, they call a method of the service, and this service has all the business logic. So the service, all the filtering logic, or just we are saying that take only 5 of all the books that are present, all that kind of business logic, or sorting, for example, all that happens in the service. Okay, then what else? We said there was repository. What is repository? So this is the layer where the classes actually talk to the database. So this is where we have queries like get me all the titles with this particular, all the books with this particular title, for example. All of that happens in this layer. And finally, we said there is models. What does models do? Oh, well, model is just data objects. They basically just represent their classes which represent some entities that we have. Like, for example, in our case, we have book information as the entity. So the model just represents that. So whatever actual data we get from, let's say, database, we can map it to a class called, let's say, book information, and it just basically represents that. It's just a data object, nothing much. So, okay. Any questions about this?
So, repository, you said talk to DB. Is it saving all the resources there, like the image files, or what does it mean when you say it talks to DB? Doesn't it save somewhere all of the resources?
Uh, okay, so in our case, for example, this one, let's assume that data is already present in DB. It was imported through some mechanism.
Hmm.
And here, what do? We search for something, and when we actually do a search, it will query the database to get the search results.
Right.
So that query part, like how to query, what to
Hmm.
query, like query using title or query using some ID or query using some other mechanism. That part, that logic will be present in the repository layer.
Okay. I think once we see the code, we can relate it to this.
Right. So one more thing, how does it flow? So when we first get a call to like an endpoint search, the controller is first that gets called. Controller internally calls methods on the services. Services internally call methods in the repository. Then repository will, well, basically that converts to a model, returns the object, returns whatever data. Then service will do some additional business logic on it, some more processing, return that data to the controller, and controller finally returns the response back to the client.
Hmm.
Alright, so this is the flow. So now maybe let's look at code and try to see if we can read a couple of them. So let's start from the. Do you want to start from the top or from the repository?
You can start from the first call. So controller.
All right. So currently, since it's a very simple application, there's just one controller. Let's look at that.
So
So,
what was the shortcut?
sorry,
What was the shortcut to hide?
command one. Yeah. All right. So okay, now let's. Ajay is definitely looking at this code for the first time, and let's assume that we both are not very familiar with Spring Boot applications in general. So we might not know a lot of annotations that are present here, right? But what we can still do is try to use the English language words that are present here to understand what is happening. And since we already know a little bit about what the responsibility of these different layers are, we can try to understand that. Okay. So first step, is this font clear enough? Should I make it bigger?
Yes.
All right. So first step, we said that search endpoint gets called. Here we can see a mapping for this search particular search endpoint. So basically, the method that actually gets called when our /search API is hit is this one, right? And it takes a request param called title. So if we remember in our network tab when we saw the network call, yeah, so it was this search endpoint with a title parameter. So that's what this is saying, that oh, there is a parameter called title.
Can we? Yeah. 1 second. Can we scroll to the left, please?
Scroll to the left.
Yeah. List book information. Okay.
Yeah.
Fine.
Basically, it is returning a list of book information when this method gets called.
Okay.
Right? And so this is the basically the entry point when that search endpoint is hit with parameter title.
Mm-hmm.
And what does this do? This is just calling another method. But if you see, it's calling a method of service, the book information service. Right? And when we spoke about this, we said from the controller, it calls service method. So that's what it is doing here. It calls a method of the service. So now let's go into.
So how do we identify which is a service and which is a controller request?
One of the easiest ways is to see which folder it is present in. So right now this class is present in this folder. Let's say this service one here, right? This is the name of the class. And if we go into the class, we can see that it is present in services folder.
But
so that's one way.
That is left to the programmer to put it anywhere, right? They could as well put it in the controller.
Correct. They could do that. So then, so that would mean that we need to understand a little bit more of Spring Boot concepts. So, for example, Spring Boot annotation has gives us an annotation about layers. So, it says, for example, it says service.
Okay.
And every different framework might have something else. So we would probably, like if we want to go into that depth, we would probably want to understand those concepts as well. So in this case, this says service. If we go back to the controller, here it says res controller.
Okay. Understood.
So this is probably the correct way of looking, not just at the repository, because yes, we could make a mistake and put it somewhere else. All right. So the next thing here is now we are calling a method of the service. So let's go into this method. I'm going to press Command B. I'm using MacBook and I've also inverted my function control. So in case Command B doesn't work for you, you might have to press function also. I'm not sure. Okay. So now we went into this method, which is in the service class. All right. And looks like it's doing quite a few things. Can we try to read and understand what it might be doing?
So there is list information, and then it is getting by. Sorry. It's getting by the title.
Right.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Just give me a minute, please. Yes, thank you. So it
Yeah.
is
Go ahead.
get books by string title. So searching by, it's not searching by. He'll get as input a string, and then book information books. From the repository, we are getting by the title, which is fetched from the query parameter, what we
Right.
send, which is title, and then it sorts in the reverse order of what is not highlighted here, but it is something of a reverse order, which we might find somewhere in comparator. Max books allowed are 5, and sublist 0, min book size, max allowed books. So this is more on the lines of maybe a loop. I don't know.
Good. So the nice thing is, well, even though you were looking at this method for the first time, there were quite a few aspects that you could read and understand what it's doing. For example, it was easy for you to say, yeah, it is going to the repository and finding all these books by the title that we've sent as a parameter. Then we are doing some sort of sort. Not sure which part, what we are using for sorting, but we are sorting and reverse order. And then some sublist is what we are doing, but we are not sure what it is. Right? So when we have this kind of confusion, one of the easiest things to help us understand the method better is to look at the test itself. So let's look at the test code. For example, this get books by method, this service related method, has some test in this particular file, which is book information service test.
How do we know there is a test?
So there are one of the ways is to look at, let's say, usages, that where all these methods are called. And if you just look at usage, then it shows, oh, it's called in controller and it's called in all these tests.
Okay.
So that's one way of looking at it. There are also shortcuts to directly take us to the test file itself. So I just press Command Shift T, and that gives me directly the test file. Doesn't give me the controller in this case. Right? When we saw usage, it also showed controller. But this is just the test file. So that's another way.
But there were
Or
four, and here it showed only one.
because it's showing me the file name directly. It doesn't show the individual tests.
Okay, fine.
Or another option is to just navigate to our test folder and see. So the folder structure would ideally be, like in most cases, would be similar. So we know that, hey, this is a service. Let's see if it's present here. That's another way also. Right. So let us go to this service test. Now, yeah, I'll close it. There are actually currently only 2 tests for this case. And let's try to read the description to say what it does. So
tell me one thing.
Yes.
Is production level code really as simple in terms of the naming? Like, should return max 5 books based on published date?
Actually, so if we have, if we model code well enough, such that it can be easily unit tested, then methods like these are possible. I have seen methods like these as well. But then if there are more, like if let's say the app method itself is very large, it's doing too many things, then of course it's, you can't name it just like this because there are multiple responsibilities now. So maybe you would have slightly more, slightly different kind of name. But that is also an indicator that you probably need to break that method down into smaller methods so that it is easily testable. So actually, in a lot of ways, right, one of the things about having unit tests is it also gives us a very good indication of whether our app code is easily testable. And if it's not easily testable, it means that we need to update the design of the app code. And that's why test-driven development actually is so popular, because you start by writing the test, and when you start by writing the test, you would have methods which are easily testable. You would have correct responsibilities there as well. Okay. So yeah, it is possible that there are methods like this. If the code is very well structured, it's possible that there are methods like this. Of course, this file in the end is just small because, well, the service has just one method, right? But the service itself could have multiple, and which means that there could be many more tests as well here. But yeah, for now it's a pretty simple application, so simple file as well. Okay, yeah. So now let's see what it is doing. This method. So the first one is returning. Well, it returns empty when there are no books. Okay. The second one says return max 5 books based on published date. So this logic that we just saw, like returning some sublist, right? Like we knew that, okay, there are multiple books, but we are doing some sort of sublist. So we're just taking some 5 of them maybe. Right? And that is basically based on, that is the method that we have here. That, it should return 5 books.
Sublist means creating a smaller list from a bigger list.
Yeah. Right, and okay, so let's look at this sublist method first. The test first. So what it's doing here is, first thing that it does is mock the repository. So when a repository call is made, please mock it and return some mock data. The mock data is basically a list of books. There are a list of 6 books in this case. Right? And why are we mocking this? Because in the service, in the actual service method, this was the first line, right, where we were actually making a call to the repository. So instead of making a real call to the real repository, which will actually talk to the DB, instead of that, we are saying, hey, you know what? Just mock that response and basically return this mock data. And this mock data is all present here in the test itself.
Why are we doing this?
So we want to independently test this particular method.
Okay.
We do not want to test this method plus this other method, repository method. Since this is a unit test and we want to independently test this, we are basically mocking the response of another classes, the call, another method call.
Because to test the end-to-end, we might as well have some other test, So we'll
Correct.
start with the unit level. Okay.
Yes. So that it's focused. So basically, if this test fails, we will know that it is something to do with this method. It's not to do with this other method call which happened, because this method is anyway mocked, so this is fine. But it is something to do with the logic here. Correct.
Okay.
Right? So yeah, now let's look at this test. So we are saying that this test, we are mocking the repository response, and we are saying it will return 5 books. And what are we asserting? Well, we actually call this method real method in the test, and then we say, oh, we are expecting 5 books, and we are expecting the book in this particular order, not in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever that order, but some other order. Okay. And why is it this order? Well, because if you look at the test data, the published date for book number 4 is like the most recent. Then, okay, this should have been long, but yeah, for simplicity, it's a smaller number. As in, it should have been actually a date time from basically a book date. But anyway, doesn't matter. A smaller number will work as well. So yeah, book 4 is the most recent, followed by book 3, and so on. So that's the order here. And that's what we are asserting.
Now this is where, for example, two of them have the same published date. Now we can in the code check what is the logic, what happens, have they handled it or not handled it. Right?
Correct. So we could add a test and check, but the thing is, when there is when it is dependent on that, then it also maybe comes down to how the sort function actually works, and it comes down to how sublist is okay. It will just take the first 5 in this case, but it will boil down to how the sort works. So maybe that test would become a responsibility of this particular sort function. Right? So that's a very good test, but that could probably go here instead of coming to this step.
Sure.
All right. So now we basically understand what this method is doing, what the service level is doing. Now, a couple of things that I wanted to mention here. So, for example, here at this point, we sort of struggle to understand what is the real logic. Right? When we looked at code, we understood what it is doing. But just by looking, when we looked at test, we understood. But by just looking at this code, we were not very sure what is actually happening. Right? And that is also an indicator that maybe we need to, do something else here. Right? Like maybe this method is having a lot of granular details. Can we probably extract this out so that it gives a, we can have a method name and it gives us a good understanding of what it is? Maybe yes, right? Like, so for example, we can just extract it and have a method that says pick top 5 books, something like that, right? I'm just giving an example. But if we do that, then in that case, now here we know we are getting the book, we are sorting it, and then we are picking top books and then returning.
So, can we do Control Z or Command Z? Like what was before? Okay, so both were in the same method. Okay, and now we are saying make this as a separate method so that we can go ahead and test it.
No, it's still tested. Now, private methods anyway cannot be independently tested. It will be tested via this method, public method itself. But if you just look at from readability point of view, then it feels like there is some logic that does the picking of the books. Okay. Right? And to a person who is maybe reading for the first time, it might be enough to say, oh, okay, this is finding, sorting, and picking books. How it's picking books is probably not important for them to know. So in that sense, having some sort of some level of abstraction will make it easier for people to read. If they want to know exactly how it is picked, then yes, of course, go into this method and see a little more details. But if they don't bother about it, if for them it's just enough to know that, okay, this is the method that is doing the picking of the books, then it's fine. Then they don't need to go into the detail. So having this kind of small abstractions is probably a good way to help us help improve readability. And this is not true for just app code, it's true for any test code that we write as well. Instead of having the house in one method, we could
Hmm.
split it and have like a top level method which talks about what it does, and then granular methods which talk about how it does. So that will just help in readability for any new person in the team or anybody else who's looking at the code. It doesn't have to be a new person, right? Like if we come back to this code after 2 weeks, it might
Hmm.
still take a little bit of processing if it is maybe this way. But if it is something that is named well itself, then it's probably easier as well.
Understood.
Uh,
And all these annotations in terms of service, auto wired, all of this is Spring Boot
these are all Spring Boot, yes.
concepts. Okay.
So if you see the imports, you can see Spring Framework.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay, and since we are talking about like naming and all of that, there is one more point I just want to speak about. So naming in general is very hard, right? But it's important that we name it well,
Hmm.
and that's because it will help us reduce our confusion or computation overhead when we are looking at the code again, or anybody else looking at the code again.
Hmm.
For example, I recently saw Marit's tweet where she said she found some class, like a method, which was named eat all cookies. Yeah, it sounds cute, but nobody really will understand at first, right, what it is doing. What
Hmm.
that method was actually doing was deleting all the cookies.
Okay.
So we can just say delete cookies, remove cookies. No need to say eat. I mean, yes, it sounds cute, but
Hmm.
it's just additional computation, right? So try to like when we do programming, let's not let's just try to convey it in the simplest possible way, and that will help in the long run.
Hmm. And
uh,
for this code, if you had to write comments, where
Comment.
if you had to write comments,
Hmm.
what and where you would start with?
The first thing I would think of if I had to write comment is why, right? Like
Hmm.
most of the times when we are when we want to write a comment, it probably means that our code is not self-explanatory.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
so writing comment should not be our default at all. We should try to express exactly what how everything through good naming or through the code itself.
Hmm.
So even in this case, for example, let's say this was like this,
Hmm.
right? What does this 5 mean? Nobody might have an idea, and I would be tempted to add a comment that says, "Oh, 5 is max number of books allowed based on business decision." Let's say later we extract it out in a config, but for now it's like this.
Hmm.
I could be tempted to say this, but why?
Hmm.
I could instead just extract this out into a variable and give it a proper name that says max number of books to display or something.
Hmm.
Right? For example, just giving an example like this. Now, similarly, even here, right, we are doing some sublist. We could probably give better names here as well to make it more understandable. So,
Hmm.
so the default should not be add a comment. The default should be, oh, how can I modify the code so that it becomes self-explanatory?
Understood.
And of course, there could be still some times where we might have to add some comment, but that could be something like we know that there are these other methods possible, but we still had to go ahead with this because the business decision is to do something like this. Maybe
Hmm. Hmm.
right? Like those kind of things where you can't really explain the whys. Maybe that could have a comment. But again, whenever we add a comment, one of the important things is like wherever we do refactoring, right, the comment also needs to move with the code.
Correct.
Uh, Otherwise, it will become a stale comment. So there are those other tricky aspects with comments. So
Hmm.
that's why, as far as possible, try to express everything that you want to say through code itself.
Hmm.
That would be ideal.
Got it.
All right, and then now let's look at. Um, okay, so now we understood what this repository is doing. Sorry, what the service is doing. Let's just look at the repository method. This is the method call that is happening,
Hmm.
which will take us to the book repository. Now, this is nothing, almost nothing, right? It just says find by title containing this title. Now, this uh, like the Spring application itself, the data repository, these things, they provide us some methods which would uh, help us to easily query from the DB without having to write our own additional queries itself. Like it does all that internally on its own. So that's why there is basically nothing in this. It's just one line. And if we actually look at the test, then it checks a couple of things. It says, oh, return all the books that match title. So basically, this one does not do return only 5, right? It's just giving all the books back. So that kind of check. It ignores case of the title. So for example, yeah, so if I had something smaller case, uppercase, something like that, then it should still return the book.
So this again you have mocked.
No, this is not mocked. So yeah, so repository test, it's actually returning, it's actually storing everything into the database, the persistent layer. Of course, when we're running this test, it's all started in memory. So it's not like a database server somewhere lying somewhere else. It's still on in memory, which gets destroyed after the test. But basically, we are creating some books and persisting it in that at the start. And then we are calling that method which is present in the repository and then asserting whether whatever we expected is getting returned. So for example, here we initially stored Harry Potter 2 books and 1 Lord of the Rings book. And when we, let's say, get a book, let's say we are searching for Lord of the Rings, then we expect only 1 book to be returned, which is book 3, Lord of the Rings. Right? So just 1 book, not these 2 other books, because they don't match the query. And another additional check we are doing here is it should ignore the case. So even though the case of this book title is capital camel, what the first letter L capital, but here it's small. Here the is completely capital, but here it's small actually. Like actually in DB it's small, but it should still return. So we did that kind of a check here. When nothing matches, it should be.
But where is the code which says ignore case?
That is actually internally done by this.
Okay. So that, okay.
Yeah, so that's probably it might be okay to not test that part also, because anyway internally Spring Boot is doing that for you, as in Spring Framework is doing that for you. But let's say somebody changes this method from find by title to find by title without ignoring case. Let's say assume that there is another method, then at least there will be one test which catches it. People will not do that, so it might not be necessary, but we could have it anyway. As in anyway, this test is to check if it gives like exactly the book, so might be okay to add it. That would really depend on how the team feels about it as well.
Right. Okay.
Right. So this is what happens. So we saw the repository.
Okay. One more question. Will we add all the tests here, or will we add just 1 or 2 tests to make sure the method works?
So, for example, like unit test, or when you're just looking at one particular unit, we would want to add maximum possible combinations there. Like having tests that are closest to the production code is going to be fast.
No, so maybe the title has a special character, and I'm not sure if that special character is returned when I search for that particular book.
Okay.
So will I continue? I mean, will I add a new test here, or will I don't know, add it somewhere else?
You could add it here, but again, that scope will really depend on a couple of factors. Now, since this is internally actually Spring Frameworks, we probably already know what it does. So we might not necessarily need to test it. But if, let's say, we were writing some custom logic ourselves, then we would want to add test for it.
And how will you know what this does? Because you don't see the code.
Right. Yes, you're right. So we probably depend on documentation, but if we are unsure, then writing test is a good thing. So a lot of, let's say we are integrating some new library, which is maybe not very well documented, right? So in those cases, one of the things that usually a lot of developers do is they write tests to see how it's working. to figure out how it actually, whether we can even use it and integrate it in our app in the first place, like to get to know that library more. So we could do something like that here as well. That we say, oh, we're not sure whether it does it. Let me just add a test and check. And then when it really does it, it's our call whether we want to keep that test or not. It might be okay to have it because let's say we are upgrading later to another version. We want to ensure that these things still continue to work as is. So might be a good thing to have those tests as well. All right. So this was our repository layer, and I'll finally just talk about this particular thing model before we end for the day because I have a meeting in 6 minutes. Okay. So this model that we just spoke about, which is basically this particular layer, we said it is just data object. So what does that mean? Well, it is actually just a representation of the things that we receive from the database. So we're just basically saying, oh, it has a book ID, which is actually our ID. Then there is a title, there is an author name, there is a date, and there is an image URL. That's all. So this has that, and then it has all these getters and setters, which we could use some other libraries which automatically add getters and setters. In this project, we have not used that. That's why there are explicitly getters are present. And the compare method, which we saw earlier, is also present here. And if you see, this is comparing based on published date. And all the, so ideally this, currently there is no test for this, if I am not wrong. Yeah, currently there. Hello? Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so that's all this object, this class does. So usually models, they represent our data, and they may have some of their own logic as well. So in this case, there was a comparing logic. It could have some other additional logic as well, but they're usually very simple classes. And so that, yeah, and for example, in this case, it's not really doing much.
Okay, I think video has frozen and just change the network.
Hello?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, now I can see you.
Okay.
Yeah, so all right. So that was pretty much it, right? This was, of course, a simple application, so it was easy for us to navigate and try to understand. But I'll just summarize what we tried to do. Right? First thing that we did was, well, we looked at like an high-level overview. So we tried to model the application. It could be through diagrams, it could be just in our head, but we tried to model it. Then we actually looked at, let's say, network calls to see which calls were happening at what particular point of time. So we try to see that first. Then we also try to look at how our application code is structured. So in this case, there are 4 directories. There could be more based on our application. And we try to understand what are the responsibilities of each. Then, of course, we followed a top-down approach, but we could also do a bottom-up approach. Whichever we want to, we are comfortable with, we could do that and try to read the code. Now, when we're reading the code, even though we don't understand maybe all the syntax and all the details, we are trying to still make sense of it by looking at those English words, which means that our code needs to be written such that it's easily readable.
Right.
And then when we had some confusions, we looked at the tests for that. And with the tests, we understood that, this is what it's actually doing. Okay? And then we briefly spoke about naming conventions and or even abstraction levels, like how we can extract certain things out so that the whats are present in one place and the hows may be in some other method, for example.
Hmm.
Right? What we can also do is something that we didn't see today is also debug the application. So let's say we could put breakpoints in between and stop it somewhere so that we can actually look at how the code is actually behaving, what it's doing, what values it's returning, and so on. So that's another uh, possibility. We didn't get time to look at it. Maybe we could see that some other time.
Hmm.
But this is mostly what really it takes to read a code. And I just want to say a couple of more things. It's important to practice. It's not going to just come in one day, right? And like GitHub has so many different projects, so maybe we could use like just look at GitHub and see some projects and try to read. That's one approach.
Hmm.
The other thing on our projects itself, we can um, you know like if we find an issue, maybe we could work with our developer and try to debug it together. And when we see how they are debugging, we will know that this is how they are reading code, this is how they are looking at code, and that's one of the nicer ways to learn as well.
Hmm. And
Oh, that's,
reading the documentation in
yeah,
terms of
sure.
the framework.
Yes.
Hmm. Good. Nice. I think this was useful as always. Thank you.
Thank you.
So,
I had fun writing this.
good, good, good. Okay. So, thank you everyone, and let's meet in upcoming sessions.
Thank you.